Council meeting to order. Michelle, please call the roll of members.
D'Amico.
Here.
Troyer.
Here.
Salvatore.
Here.
Mancini. Here. Bergio.
Here.
Powers. Here. Higgins.
Here. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board and on board.
Item C, approval of minutes of preceding meetings. We have two. Item number 1, regular council meeting held on March 3rd, 2015.
Motion to accept is printed.
Support.
Motion accepted as printed, properly supported, under discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Go to item number 2, regular council meeting held on March 18th, 2015.
Motion to accept is printed.
Supported. Motion made, properly supported, under discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Go to item number D, remarks from the audience on any subject. Now is your time.
Tim Jarrett, 15661 Hocking Boulevard. Now that spring has finally sprung, I'm happy to report that the Hocking Boulevard Speedway is now open for business. I know I had your speed trailer on my tree lawn for 3 weeks last year, made a marked difference. And I was wondering when that will be available again. And as soon as it's available, I would like to have it placed back on my tree lawn. You keep it there all years, as far as I care, but I know that's not feasible. But do you have any idea when it's going to be readily available?
I would, yes, you can go to answer, Dave.
Mr. Jarrett, we can't use the trailer until the rainy season is past because it's rather heavy and leaves indentations on the lawn. But as soon as we get some dry weather, I can certainly talk to the chief and we can have it reset on the Hocking Boulevard. It won't be a problem. But we can't do it until the weather is drier.
Understood.
It'd take a couple days of drying to make
Okay,
it.
understood. I mean, you go up and down my street, you can see the burnout marks from the, race car drivers. And it's not safe, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joe Markusik. I live at 13911 Bellbrook Drive. I'd like to thank Mr. Single for talking to me after the last meeting. I would like to ask Mr. Jameson, I know that this is an ongoing issue, if he could explain the declare an emergency, which is on just about every ordinance on the agenda week after week after week. I'd also like to tell him that I understand his lawsuit and everything that he's going through the process. I understand that completely. What I'd like to know is if there would have been any way to avoid that, to avoid all of this spending on the lawsuit. I would also like to ask why there is no public records request form on the website. I know Michelle told me that I can email her to ask for any kind of information that I want, and she'd be more than happy to go over it with me. But I would rather just have a public request form to submit and then get the information that I need, and if there's any questions, just go from that point. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And your report.
Okay, Susan Barber, 5819 Robert Drive. Hope everyone had a nice Easter. I had a lovely one. Mayor Coyne, City Council, and the public attending. I feel this is a mockery that every time you change some of the City Council meetings, sometimes 4:15 or 4:30, and you're not letting the it's like you're not letting the public know what is going on. And I just think, I wish you would keep them for people that are working. I feel that you're shortchanging our residents, for they don't know what's going on, because this is a public building, and we are the public. And I feel some of the cabinet members are, they're too high price. They want to spend money that's unnecessary, especially the lawsuit. And now one of the council members, Mr. D'Amico, he wants to put some kind of gadget thing on the refrigerator. It might be a good idea, but what happens if you drop at a store, a park, and you're not at home? So that's my questions about that. And so I just feel that you should leave things alone. And I know we had passed the budget last week. So, and if you do decide to do this project with the magnets or refrigerator stuff or whatever, and where's the money going to come from? And since we're a financially strapped city, I don't know how you're going to come up with the money. We should just leave things alone. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Gary Riva, 16902 Sandhurst Drive. I have a question, if someone could answer. How many streets were paved last year in the city? Three? Zero. And they're zero?
Eagle Road.
Okay. One long one. And there's, what, 110 streets? Something like that? 113. I live on Sandhurst Drive. I want to change the name of it to Sandhurst Bumpy Drive, or Sandhurst Railroad Track. Because when you drive down the street, it's clunk, 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 clunk. I bought a new car. I avoid my street. I go Harrow instead. So, I know the city has pressing issues, but at the present rate, I'll be dead before you do my street. So could I please be pushed up on the list? So whoever's in charge of this, service director, or whoever, please ride on my street, turn your radio down and listen to your suspension. The other point is, I wanted to mention to council members, I know there's a pressing financial problem, but don't oppose economic developments like the sidewalk program or street paving. We've got to keep the value of the housing up in Brook Park. You can't do everything, but if we don't do these kinds of things, especially the sidewalk program, that gets everybody excited. They see their neighbor spending money, and then they'll spend some money. And you know, the honorable opposition here to the mayor, sometimes they say there's an extra $1 million, or sometimes they say there's an extra $3 million. Please find that money and spend some of it on Sandhurst Drive. The figure seems to go up 1 million, 3 million, whatever. You know, Tom's hiding it in his backyard. So, form a posse, go there and dig it up. It's in a coffee can. And then spin it on Sandhurst Drive. That's all I have, thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor Coyne, President Patton, all council members and cabinet here. Thanks for being here, and I'm glad I could speak to you. Particularly,
Frank, we have your name and address just for the record,
excuse me,
please.
that's right. Frank Cosmerl, Kosmerl. I live at 15942 Paulding Boulevard, just 3 houses from Dolores. One of the most used streets in the city, I think. Anyway, I wanted to address the lawsuit. okay, against the Save Our Station Committee and the 3 particular members, where I guess they're being filed on separately also in addition. And I think the cost of attorneys for them, as well as the money being spent under the auspices of obviously our law director, who's hired 2 attorneys that I'm sure that are not what I would call reasonably priced. But anyway, that combination, I think the people should be getting lawyers hired by the law director to defend the people or speak for the people. We're all citizens of the same city, okay? We know there's 88 counties in this state of Ohio. There's probably a few, maybe tens of thousands for all I know, cities and towns that have city councils or village councils at the very least running their cities. And in my life, I've lived almost every month of my life in Cleveland, Ohio, of my 79 years plus. I was born in Buffalo, but we got here soon. My parents were closed and they had to leave Buffalo to come to Cleveland for a job. The house was taken away by the banks in 1935. But anyway, point is, I've never heard of anyone in Ohio, any city or village or township suing its residents, period, okay? I think it's a vulgar thing. I can go further with that, but the point is, I've never heard of it in my 79 years of a city suing its residents. Those residents of which, those people, those residents of the committee, and the 3 particular leaders, I suppose, of the committee, those 3 that are sued separately besides being sued by on the committee, they did a lot of hard work. They had to get petitions signed. And then they had to get it on a ballot. And then I heard, of course, somehow the first group of signatures was turned down somehow through council. I'm not sure if I got that story right. Maybe I don't have it right. But they went on and got more signatures, got it on a ballot, filed with the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections. The Board of Elections accepted their initiative petition to permanently, hopefully, reopen the Rubel fire station to protect them, to give them respectably livable type of response times for their area, even though there's not very many people out there anymore. You know, we traded with Cleveland under Mayor Coyne to get the north side of Brook Park Road. They got our area for expanding their runway. We lost more homes too. I don't know how many homes were lost. I think there were a few lost or had to be taken out. And then, so we have problems, you know. We've also chopped up the city a little bit with the roadways. I don't even know how to get back to see those homes, by the way. I've never gone to a map. I guess I could do a map quest and get to see those homes that I saw years ago when I was still a commissioner or an inspector for Brook Park back in 1982, 83, 84. But anyway, getting down to the business, I don't know how to get there, but those people still have to be attended to. They're still citizens of the city, as I am a city, a resident of this city. And we've come a long way down, I think, with this lawsuit. It's one thing to maybe negotiate. It's in the Bible. We're supposed to try to negotiate with our neighbors if we got something to talk to them about. I know the mayor was not happy with the fact that that issue passed on February 2nd to reopen Rubel Road Fire Station. But he graciously then said, okay, I'll open it, which was marvelous. I haven't talked to him about it, and I thanked him for it. I thanked him for his humility, which is great in a leader, to have humility.
Don't go too far.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, you're being, see how he's really getting humble. He's really, I won't overdo it. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me. You're right. You are the boss. No question about it. But I know, as upsetting as it was to be reversed by the voters, maybe, but they are citizens, and it was a legitimate vote. And what was it, on the order of 2-1 they won? But now you're forcing them to spend a lot of money on attorneys, and I know it's going to run into thousands of dollars per each of them, the members of the committee. Because I know you're not getting chump change lawyers. They're going to have a tough time. I have a lot of empathy for those people. I have a lot of empathy for the whole city. We got to pay for those lawyers that Mr. Jameson has hired, our law director, Neil Jameson. Well, that's the problem. It just a very egregious, and again I said we're vulgar. I think it is. How do we do this? This is like, this hit the newspapers. People know what's going on. Do we really want that kind of a legacy? Here in this year, 2015, there's enough trouble. We got ISIS cutting the heads off of people like me regularly. Crucifying children. Did you know that? They're actually doing crucifixions in those countries. It's crazy. It's absolutely demonic. Anyway, well, we're not doing that here. But let's not ruin people's lives. Some of those people may lose their homes in this city for paying lawyers. Take out mortgages to pay an attorney to fight our city. And I've never heard of it. I'd like to know, I bet I'll ask the director of law if he has anything on record of anybody in history of the state of Ohio where a city has sued its residents for doing something permitted by the charter. The charter says you can file an initiative petition. Those people didn't do anything extraordinary. It's right in the charter. Initiatives, they come up before referendums.
Frank, we'll have Neil give an answer during his report on your
Excuse me?
We'll have the law director give an answer during his report on your issue.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I think it's terrible. And I got another favorite word. It's despicable. And we're all responsible in this council. And I am too. If I don't speak out, I'm as bad as anybody else. Which I am not really great. But I'm talking about on this level. I'm a resident. I think all residents ought to be treated properly. If you got a problem with them, negotiate with them. That's the first step good people are supposed to follow. We just pledge allegiance to the United States of America, and the United States of America protects our religious liberty right now.
Frank, he will answer you during his report. He'll give a full report on what happened, what he's doing, and why to you. And then
That's good.
afterwards, I'd suggest if you have any issues after his report, to wait till after the meeting to talk to him about it. So you have full
Thank you. I
clarity
appreciate
on what it is.
I wrote him 2 little notes. I was looking for a response. He never gave me a response on my 2 notes. What I want to finally say is, this city is functioning just like Soviet Russia cities. We're Putin,
Frank,
and you got the haves and the have-nots.
Frank, please.
You got the haves and the have-nots.
Frank,
dictators. No, I'm not going to stop.
Well, Frank, here's the thing. You have a right to get up and speak, but I think you're going a little beyond now. So he will speak to it tonight. He's going to give an answer, and I invite you to stay afterwards to discuss that with him. No problem with that, but this is not the Soviet Union. We're not doing anything like that. Not going to have you up here saying that. So all due respect, Frank, known you a long time. I know you're a passionate guy, but we hear what you got to say. He will answer during his report.
Well, I will wait for what the law director says. You're right.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's do everybody a favor and do that. And then afterwards, if you want to debate him, you can wait till after the meeting and do that.
But I meant everything I just said.
I hear you.
I think it's correct.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Thank you.
Thank you, members of council, fellow citizens. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Ray Peterlin, 5811 Wangler Drive, Brook Park. I have a question about the roads, such as Snow Road that was redone not too long ago, the rec center that was done a year ago, and all that seems to be falling apart. Now, do we blame the contractor or do we blame value engineering? Value engineering is when you put out for bid and the bid comes back maybe $5 million, and you say, gee, the mayor ain't gonna like that. You gotta get it down to $2 million. And the contractor says, change the specs, and I'll do what you asked to be done, and I can do it for $2 million. Is that why our highways are falling apart? Is that why the rec center was just done? Why did we spend the money if we only get a year out of it? And Snow Road, the same thing. Seems to be too thin. Seems to be holes all over where it wasn't poured thick enough. And the second thing with the highways, to have them last, you have to have a crown in that road. So the water is pretty much forced to go to the curb and forced to go to the catch basins. In a lot of the roads in the city of Brook Park, the water just lays there. It's not being forced to go anywhere. And of course, if it's laying there where it shouldn't be, it's going to freeze, and it's going to take the life of the road, which may be 25, 30 years, and shorten it drastically because there's no crown. I have other things I could talk about tonight, but that's a good one that I'd like some answers on. Thank you.
Thank you. The engineer will answer that during his report.
Mr. Chairman, everybody's done. I just like to make one comment. We got one more, didn't come up. Yes, we do.
Hello, Diane Oleg from 15624 Richard Drive. I just want to say this is my home, and I take pride in the area in which I live. I'm also a little different on how I go about things. For instance, when I see a container on the street, I pick it up and I place it in the trash receptacle. If there are garbage cans blowing around on a windy day, I will get out of my vehicle and I will remove them or put them onto the street. So I'm here to help. I look around the streets of my neighborhood and I see lawns that have accumulated papers, phone books, and other miscellaneous items that are due to the winter, accumulation of the winter. Now, since the snow has melted, you would think people would take the time to pick these items up and tidy their yards. Unfortunately, I look around at the property and they look as if they're getting ready to have a garage sale. Private property is a sensitive issue, but it needs to it needs to be addressed in a more aggressive manner. The community needs to stay on top of the situation with follow-up phone calls, maybe registered mails, or whatever is necessary to keep our city at its best. I'm only one voice, and I always do try to bring a suggestion to the table to solve a problem. But other than calling City Hall and reporting things of what kind of action could be done to feel good about our neighborhood. I guess I just want to know what we could do together to make things a better community. And that was what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We're out of audience participation. You have something you want to say, Councilman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to let Mr. Riva know that last year I put in a memo asking that those joints were ground and that they be ground and patched, and I would do that again this year. Thank you.
Okay, good item E, reports from standing committee. Okay, aviation and environmental, Councilman Higgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no items on tonight's agenda.
Thanks, Councilman. Go to Finance Committee, Councilman D'Amico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board of Control met tonight. We had 34 items that were passed and approved, and we have 2 items on tonight's council agenda. And as you know, the audit committee is in the city of Brook Park, and that is still going underway. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Councilman. Go to Legislative Committee, Councilman Schroeder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Legislative Committee has 1 item on tonight's agenda.
Thanks, Councilman. Parks and Recreation, Councilman Bergio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just 2 items to report. The Golden Gloves boxing tournament starts this Friday, April 10th, and Saturday, April 11th. I think you can part of it. Oh, I love to. They will also be back on April 17th and Saturday, April 18th for the finals. And lastly, the senior tea is this Saturday, April 11th, from 1 o'clock to 3:30 p.m. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Councilman. Go to Planning Committee, Councilman Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had one piece of new business yesterday, April 6th. It was a request for aesthetic approval of 351 square foot new signage at 1400 Keystone Parkway, located in the U5A zone district. It was approved. They are actually, it's the animal hospital. They're moving from 140 to Brook Park Road. It looked great, well lit, and we'll have an approval for a new 100-wire communication tower. It's an internal approval coming up. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman. We'll go to Safety Committee, Councilman Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to share with the mayor and council and the residents some correspondence that I received from the railroad union's representatives who are good friends of ours. In fact, he grew up in Brook Park. He sent me a memo indicating that he wanted to pass it on to the mayor and the members of council, that our resolution that we passed, encouraging the railroad to pay more attention to what's going on, to look at some of these tracks and be prepared for any major catastrophe. He said that our resolution is starting to catch on around the country. The city of Philadelphia has now just adopted a very similar resolution. He said ours was better, but he says theirs is good. And I just want to share with you some of the things. I won't read you the whole 3-page letter. I'll just share some of the highlights. Talking about track conditions, the leading cause for train derailment in the United States, accounting for approximately 1/3 of all the train accidents according to the data published by the Federal Railroad Administration. And the FRA statistics confirm that there was 1,220 reportable train derailments that occurred in 2014, resulting in nearly $200 million in repairs and replacement costs for damages and equipment alone, not including the cost for human lives, private property, and the environment. And just to bring you up to speed on a very astonishing statistic here, transporting crude oil through the United States railroads systems grew from 9,500 carloads in 2008 to more than 400,000 carloads in 2013. So this is an ongoing problem. It looks like it might even start to get worse. So I just wanted to let you know that our resolution is moving forward. And I am going to reschedule another meeting with the railroads. If anybody wants to be a part of it, I'll let you know when it's going to be. Councilman Mancini was at the last one, so I think we have to stay on top of this, and I will keep you informed. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Councilman. We could also talk to them about the idling of the trains back behind Sylvia, because they're back out there again, leaving those trains idling behind those people's homes all through the night, it seems like. So we can bring that up. But thank you very much. We'll go Service Committee, Councilwoman Powers.
I have no report.
Thanks, Councilwoman.
But I do have a comment or a question. I was told last week that I shouldn't speak from the podium in the audience, that I would be allowed to speak up here. So will I be allowed to speak here tonight?
At the end of the agenda, we'll do that.
All right, thank you.
I'll go to you.
Thank you.
Okay, Board of Zoning Appeals, Councilman D'Amico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board of Zoning and Appeals met last night. We had 2 items approved, one of which you heard Mr. Mancini speak on, and the next meeting will be May 4th, provided there's applications made. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Move to item F, reports from special committees. We'll start with Southwest General Health Center. Trustee Councilman Salvatore.
And thanks again, Mr. Chairman. Southwest had an unusually slow start this year. After an early surge due to the flu, we had a tremendous drop-off. The first 2 months of the year, we achieved only 1% operating margin versus our goal was set for 3%. The majority of the meeting that we had on March 25th was the focus was congratulating the doctors and the nurses and the rest of the support team for all the awards that they earned in 2014. We had a remarkable achievement there with over 12 different awards from all over the country. And at this meeting, we also recognized the employees, and they were received an incentive check. Each employee, totaling 2,600 employees, received a bonus check in the neighborhood of approximately $100 for helping towards achieve the goals. Also, congratulations went out to Dr. and Mrs. Pandrangi for their large contribution to the hospital as far as the capital campaign. And they were also honored back on March 28th for their gift for establishing a professorship in plastic surgery. from St. Louis University. There also made significant progress made in Southwest related to reduction in length of stay. Reduction in length of stay per patient went from 4.7 in January down to 4.1 in February and March. The subcommittee for the Constitution and Bylaws submitted a report to us that I will keep the council informed as to looking at the attendance records of some of the members of the board, the delegate appointments, and the review of the board policy. And as these come forward, I will bring them forward to council. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Councilman. Go to Berea Board of Education, Representative Councilman Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rick, I say Dr. Pandini, they'll be naming that hospital after him. He's put a lot of money into that hospital.
Mr. Pandrangi?
Yeah, did a very good job there. He's put a lot of money in there.
I think he donated $3 million.
Maybe I should do the same. But on my report here, I know a lot of you will know that spring break's out, and be a little careful. The kids are out. I know the weather's a little rough. Doesn't mean they're not out. I'm sure they're at the rec center and things, but and maybe even on your way home tonight, I think that's very important. They'll be off till Friday. April 30th will be Distinguished Alumni Hall of Fame Dinner at the Middleburg Heights Junior High School, and the 33rd Annual Retirement Dinner to recognize employees who have or will retire at the end of 2014 school year. I wanted to go over the comparisons of the monthly review expenditures. Actually, their expenditures from July 2014 to February 2015. The salaries from 2015 to 2013 have gone down to $28 million from 30. Total expenditures, $50 million, down from 58, which I think is a nice drop. I mean, sometimes we get on our schools about spending money, things of that sort, but as you know from my reports, they have been bringing their numbers down. 3 students qualified for the Ohio High School Mathematics Invitation Olympiad at Capital University: Fred Asmus, Tarini Sai, and Jacob Walter, and that'll be on March 28th. The Berea City Schools will recognize Nancy Brayford, Community Relations Specialist, who won the Brook Park Chamber of Commerce Business Person of the Year. Congratulations, Nancy. I deal with her. I know a lot of other people deal with her, and that was an honor well deserved. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. With no items on G or H, go to item I, reports and communications from the mayor. Mayor Coyne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. I first want to announce we're going to have a town hall meeting April 30th at the Ford Middle School. The residents will be getting a notification, and I'll do a follow-up on our code red, because I think it's important that this community engage in a larger discussion about what's happening and where we're going and what needs to be done. We're grateful for the folks that come here, but I think we need a larger dialogue in this community. First, let me say I want to thank Diane Oblak for coming up here and pointing out some weaknesses in our own personal behavior. There was an old mayor who said what we should do is give folks little mirrors like we give to our daughters when they're small, and ask them to look in the mirror and see what they're doing as their part to make their community a better place to live. Maybe I should get about 7,000 or 8,000 of those mirrors, because what often was just folks' pride in their own neighborhoods. When long-time family commitments were made here, we didn't have to have discussions about those kinds of things. The neighbors would be helping each other do things, and hopefully someday we can get back to that again. We've lost so many of our long-time residents, and some of the new ones here are coming on a wink and a prayer on mortgages that they can't afford, and so therefore letting some of their property go. Young lady from Bellbrook Boulevard, Mrs. Makis, I believe, Marcus or Makis, I will talk to our website contractor to see if we can't get that records form on the website for you, so you can apply for that. I have with great interest, Susan Barber keeps talking about these cabinet members that I have that are overpriced. And I think that they just wrote an article a few weeks ago about the salaries of the mayors of the city, and as you can see, I think I'm right in the middle of the pack someplace, and I'm not advocating increase in compensation for myself. But the problems that the city faces have little or nothing to do with the compensation for the directors that are here. They're probably the best cabinet that I've ever assembled, and I served 20 years prior to the city, and I selected them for a lot of very good reasons, knowing what I was facing coming in here as mayor of the city. And in most cases, their underlings are making more money than they are. So let's put that, and there's not a $3 million cabinet or $2 million cabinet. There are boards and commissions, there are appointments I have, there are other elected officials that have appointments, so that doesn't exist. And my understanding on the blog is literally every day there's some discussion about how much Mayor Coyne's cabinet members make. So again, I think that criticism is unfair and not warranted. Gary Riva talking about the streets. There is no money for streets this year, and this is one of the discussions that we're going to have hopefully in this town hall meeting. We have the ability to pay for one project that's been promised for 5 years over on Sylvia and Leslie Drive. Mr. Peterlin came in and talked about the specifications for the roads and the crowns of the roads and all those kinds of things. Our street bases are literally deteriorated. I wish that we had chuckles, because it'd be easy for the service director to go out and square off and repair them. Our streets have deteriorated to the point where there's nothing left to grind, nothing left to overlay, and that issue can only be addressed by the help of the voters of this community. And I hope if they didn't listen to me on anything else, they listened to me on that, because if not, we're going to lack the ability to make these improvements, and our neighborhoods are going to continue to decline. Mr. Peterlin made a statement about changing the specifications. In my 20 years here, in my time here now, I've never changed the specifications for anything. There's a spec put out, and matter of fact, we have an ordinance. If the bid price exceeds the engineer's estimate, I believe it's about, is it 10%, Ed? It must be rebid if it exceeds that, for protection for the city. Where I get concerned is when we have a bid that comes in that's substantially lower than the engineer's estimate, and then we have to deal with that because what's the lowest and or best bid? Now that's the way that works. We don't set the specification for county roads. Council President Patton, Councilman Higgins, or service directors in other city, they'll tell you the same thing. Nobody thinks they're getting the overlay that they're getting. Nobody. All right, how do we challenge that issue on those streets? As far as the recreation parking lot's concerned, I don't believe that it's been repaved in 12 years. Last year they did a crack sealing operation over there that got us a year, and that's about all it's supposed to get for you. We have substantial demands in our public facilities that people use as well, and there's no money for that. I continue to hear residents come up here, and I enjoy Mr. Riva because I know he was kidding about the $3 million, and when I talked about it, I said that's what I needed to get us back on sound footing in the city. Meaning that we would use parking tax for what it was intended for economic development. Meaning that we would, for the first time, not have to spend in our reserves. And we would have to cut our workforce to create that savings so that we could do all of those three things. And we're going to do them now. We cut $1.6 million out of the heart of the operation of this city on the backs of very good employees that have been here a long time, many of which I hired. And we laid off policemen and firemen, and we made some changes in the rules and regulations in the police department that allowed us, our officers, working 12-hour shifts that you will see. Believe me, residents will be coming and complaining about the tickets that they're writing, because we haven't seen volumes like this with the new stop program that the director talked about. You'll all be up here coming up complaining that you're getting a speeding ticket and how much money did it cost, but I know that you want to drive slower on your streets. So there are many things that we need to talk about in this community about where we're going and voices that you hear, and the dictatorship of Thomas J. Coyne Jr., the long King Coyne, some of these people call me. I have spent most of my adult life in the service of this community. I did not come back for salary. I did not come back for humility. While I have some more than I had 10 years ago, that's not why I'm here. And I say this over and over again. I only came here for one reason, one term, to turn this town around. There are some to suggest there should be a 4-year plan, an 8-year plan. We've had a 4-year, an 8-year, and a 6-year plan. And everybody thought they were doing the right thing to continue to expending revenues that were there for security. We operated on those. Okay? We were kidding ourselves. So now the dirty work is left to me. I came to the voters of this city last year and said you need to do 2 things. You need to increase this income tax because our roads and our buildings are falling apart. There's a certain segment of this community wants the rec center open. We're trying to keep it open by reducing costs about $300,000. There's $3 million that have to be put in that building this year, or it's not going to stay open. That's on the capital side. We've solved our operating problems for this year because of those cuts. Not going into next year, but this year. Who's going to pay for it? It has to be done. And if you're maybe talking about all segments of our operations in the city are going to compete for tax dollars. Put a proposal on to pay for the rec and for senior programs. That was beat 3-1. And we had folks coming in, some sitting in this room. Mayor took this away from us. No, I didn't. You took it away from yourselves. Gave you the facts, told you what needed to be done. And in spite of that, we went and rolled our sleeves up, mayor and the council here, with the help of most of council. We made dramatic changes in the way we deliver services. Not quite enough yet. And we'll have more dialogue about that at the town hall. But finally, I want to address this suing of the citizens that my good Catholic friend Frank Cosgrove brings up my conscience all the time. Reminds me of my 13 years of Catholic education. There's nothing vulgar or unfair about any of it because citizens are not being sued. Politicians are being sued. A political action committee is being sued. This vote was the greatest hoax on the people of the city of this community that I've ever seen in my political life. The fact of the matter, there was an ordinance on the book for 30 years that was ignored because it was unenforceable. And it is not in the best interest of this city to arbitrarily have elections that change the basic operation of the community. That's for the mayor and the council to decide, and you make your determinations at election time. Okay? I wonder right now, do you know it's going to cost $750,000 to keep a station open a block from my house that doesn't add one iota to safety to this community? And that's a fact. I can show you that the consolidation of that department saved lives. Didn't threaten lives, saved lives. So we're going to have a continuing education about this, but make no mistake about it, these folks are politicians. And it just seems strange that folks that should be proud, this is an honorable thing, take ownership of it. The Astorinos aren't here tonight. They had citizens do this. Is the same group that opposed the very airport deal that you talked about, Mr. Cosmo? Okay, that very deal. You know how this city's functioning today? We're above water because of the $6 million a year that comes in from NASA Glen. That's why. Okay, now, let me finally say this to you. I was over at the Ford plant the other day, and I was very impressed. I was there with Senator Brown. And, once again, we're going to have a treaty that's going to probably displace so many of our workers. And I went over there, and where I'd see maybe 16 employees in a section doing work, I saw 4. I saw robots. They may hire 200 new people over there. Is that a help to us? Yes. It's not even close to the $160 million in payroll we would need to create in order to sustain the operation of the city as we have known it for so long. Okay? So that 200 jobs over there is not going to all of a sudden miraculously change the condition of the city. We are an older city. And if we don't change the way we deliver services, and none of the changes I propose, by the way, one assessment on the people of this community. Where we cannot avoid that is in your infrastructure, your roads and your sewers. There is some criticism out there, and I'm sure I'll see it in our local paper, no matter what I do is incorrect, that I'm frivolously spending money, and they usually claim that $1 million would take care of the roads. I drove with the engineer the other day. We got about $10 million that have to be done right now this year in road work in this city that I don't know what we're going to do about it. We talked to some of our bankers to see what happens. Our sidewalk program that was here when I was mayor created more improvements in neighborhoods with new steps and new driveways and new sidewalks because they took advantage of the price. I'm going to invest $150,000 in that. One of my greatest, I felt very sad, we had many of our people that have cross connections. It's really not the city's responsibility to do anything about it. It's their responsibility. Talking to council, and I apologized to people that night. I felt helpless because the first time as mayor, I couldn't say to you, listen, we're going to do something. We're going to find some funds, and we're going to do something to help you out. So we're going to fashion a cross-connection elimination program doing the same thing. If you're willing to invest half, we're willing to invest half. To me, that rebuilds neighborhoods and creates a solution to problems, again, rising the property rates. Economic development, someone said we're going to give $4 million to clean up their property. God, I wish I had it. And God, I wish they'd let me do it because we're fighting with them over that right now. And when I say to you that $500,000, this has been suspended for 6 years, economic development. And that's why the other reason you don't have revenues in this town to deal with our problems because nobody in this room ever had to pay them. Not me, not you, because we had a revenue source of people working in this city who paid the way for us. Okay, and finally, what I've said to you before, I'm going to say to you again, okay? Those days are gone. As Mrs. Oblock suggested, what can we do? You're going to have to do something. You're not going to solve your capital problems in this town without more money. And people continually attack any program I propose, now or in the future, makes no difference to me, because I'll justify that argument. But the good citizens of this town have to be heard, because the Political Action Committee is driving the agenda of this town, which is only 20% of the people of the city that voted in February on this issue. And by my authority, I opened the station to close things down, cool things down, so we can have a discussion about it. And I think this community at large has to have that discussion about how we deliver services to the people of this community. And I think hopefully when we have, and I hope that people come out, so that we can do that and make some intelligent decisions, because quite frankly, I've done all I can. There isn't much more that I can do in my authority as the mayor of the city of Brook Park, which I have considerably. So I'm not going to speak for the law director, but that challenge has to happen because you don't want your city governed by malcontents. You just don't. And the reality, I like your pouring out of sympathy. The fact of the matter is the same law firm that drafted the agenda is the same law firm representing the committee. And that's the lawyer for the firefighters union. Open your eyes, Brook Park. It's not the mayor you got to be concerned about. We have to have this discussion as a community. I ask you to have an open mind, and we'll present the facts to you. Okay? So I thank you, and I want to thank Dr. Pandrangi because he did my surgery. You see, I can't sit for a long time. I had a little surgery here, and mentally he tells me I'm almost as sharp as it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any members of council that have questions to the mayor? Councilman Troyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mayor, you mentioned the law firm that the committee used. Did you not use that same law firm when you sued the city after you left office?
Yes, I did. I paid for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
So it's just a law firm that people use?
It's a law firm that represents the firefighter councilman, and you know that they're the same ones that drafted the legislation. You didn't even know what was in it.
But you yourself used that lawsuit
I sure did. I'm not
firm previously.
listen to me, and I paid for it.
And I could use that lawsuit firm if I had an issue.
Yes,
Thank
you could, sir, but don't you think it's really beyond coincidence? Don't you?
No.
You know
I
better
don't.
than, you don't? You know better than that.
And another question is, you mentioned the $1.6 million savings by having layoffs and cutting workers. Where did that $1.6 million savings end up? Because we finished the year, I believe last year at 20.3 was it that we spent last year with the almost $80,000 surplus. And then this budget was just 21.3, roughly around there, I believe, off the top of my head. Just where did that $1.6 million go?
Well, if you had 17 more employees this year, figure out what that is, so your budget would be higher. Your spending would be higher. And you'd be pressed for the revenue to do that.
Councilman Mancini.
Change subject real quick. Mayor, I know we talked, well, I had asked before at the same time at our last council meeting. You had mentioned $8 to $10 million on the roads. Well, probably 20 million I need in my ward for my roads.
Probably right.
Very bad, and I can name them. I know a lot of you drive on them. And I'll say it again, and I said it at the last council meeting. I know everybody in this room, and I know everybody cares. The rec center, no one wants the rec center to shut. I was there today. Mary Ann will tell you it was full. And it's a great facility, but yeah, you're right, it needs a lot of work. And obviously we got the State of the City coming up April 30th. Where do we go here? To get my roads fixed, the gentleman that came up, Mr. Rivera, his roads fixed. Where do we go here? Because you're right, the money's stretched. A lot of that's past tense, but we have to, like I always say, move ahead. And I thought you said it good too about the Ford plan. That ain't coming back. And maybe some jobs will, maybe some things over there. What are we looking at again? Because I mean, some of the people come to the microphone and it was roads, and how do we get these roads done? You said no 4 8-year plan, but it's not going to be done next year. And so that's my question to you, somewhat again. How do we get to these roads? How do we get this done? How do we get our infrastructure? We're working very well on the housing, but the sidewalks, but the roads are going to be a big issue because they're not going to get any better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mayor, the answer to your question is you have to have more revenue. And I will talk to the people about putting on the ballot, increasing the city income tax that will provide for capital improvements only, not operating, because it's there. And if we do that, I'm going to meet with one of our bankers tomorrow to see what we can do short term, because it's, when can we get on the ballot? Probably not before the fall. But I think honestly, and I see several candidates, would-be candidates for public office here, I think everybody, you guys are going to be out there this year, you got to tell our people the truth. They can't. The hometown news can criticize me for the rest of their days. The reality is the folks of the town have to look at themselves in the mirror and say, what am I willing to do? Most of our folks, our seniors, won't have to pay one dime in city income tax. They don't pay it. Other young families here, why should people stay? My God. We used to do $1 million a year in capital improvements to our parks and playgrounds. Okay? There, look at that. And when people say to that, well, that's not important. What's important to somebody? Our whole infrastructure of this town is decimated. Okay? And the fact of the matter is there's been nothing done to the rec center in 12 years. Those units I put in. That roof that I put in. And I'm not blaming anybody. The reality is you can't not let it go anymore. So one of the discussions I want to have for people, and I hope everybody in this town comes, so we can look them in the eye and tell them. But we all collectively have to understand it. If anybody can tell me where you have the revenue sources, real, tangible, long-term revenue sources to deal with these problems, please show them to me. And when you have anyone who lives in this city, I'm willing to bet you right now, every senior in this town that I would see would write me a check for $115 tomorrow, bring all those programs back they had.
They do it.
I'm willing to bet you in a minute. I didn't lie to them, told them the truth. Here's what it costs. No one understands because we never had to pay for this. So collectively, all of us, elected officials, and one of the suggestions I'm going to make to people, I'm not interested, I don't care who runs for city council. All good people up here. Some of them I have profound disagreements with, others have worked with me and helped me. If anybody comes to your door and say, hey, you got any problems or complaints? Throw them off your front porch. Say, what are you going to do as elected official to help turn this town around? Okay, and if they tell you there are people up here that told folks not to vote for those taxes, not because they weren't needed, it's because Tom Coyne proposed them, all right? And this 20% vote, 20% have voted against me every time I've ran for public office in this town. Anyone who knows polling will tell you that's the way it is. I'm not going to stop leading, but at some point in time, I just have to say, you know what, if we can't have partners, if our citizens won't be our partners, there isn't much more we can do. So when you go out there campaign and say, listen, we've got to get this achieved, and we can tell you how little it's going to cost our people. All right, and I'm telling you right now that what we used to do, we had part of Dennis, remember, and Brian when he was service director, Dennis as a councilman, we had the 70-30 split, and we had 5% for debt retirement service. So we go and borrow $10 million or $5 million because of what we needed to do to accelerate our programs, but we had the capabilities dedicated in our revenues to take care of it. All right? So council, my answer to you is, again, you got to have more money. You're not doing this to beat somebody over the head. Listen, it's your town. We all have to live here. You keep saying we got to make tough choices. Now it's going to be up to our citizens to think in their pocket anymore. It's for some more money.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman. We'll move to item J, reports and communications from other departments, commissions, and public officials. We'll start with our city engineer, Ed Piatek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick update on the Smith Road Sewer Project. Mainline installation continues southerly towards Holland at Meigs. We'll continue to progress southerly, and right now mainline installation is exceeded 50%. So we are making some progress on that project. Just to address Mr. Peterlin's comments on Snow Road and resurfacing and highways, I couldn't agree with you more that an appropriate crown is very important to extending the longevity of any kind of pavement. Also as important is the existence of a subsurface drainage system, which would be typically under drains, which most of the roads installed in the 50s and 60s, at least the residentials, they weren't installed with these under drains. So, we're dealing with, streets that were built, 50, 60 years ago that were resurfacing that really need to be reconstructed. So, also another point on, maintaining our streets, a regular maintenance and crack sealing program is very important to extending the service life of our asphalt roads. The section of Snow Road, and maybe we can talk after the meeting, Mr. Peterlin, and see what section of Snow Road you're referring to, but Snow Road between Van Wert and just west of 130th was reconstructed with the underpass, and that project 6 or 7 years ago now. And I believe the last time that Snow Road was resurfaced was in the late 90s, 96, 97, I believe. So, the service life of an asphalt resurfacing project is 15 to 20 years. With proper maintenance, we're getting close to that on Snow Road. And as a side note, we have been working with NOACA and ODOT on securing funds to resurface Snow Road here in the near future. So that's all I have this evening.
Thanks, Ed. Councilman Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 questions, 1 comment. Ed, I agree with you 100% on that sealing crack, how important that is. I hear that a lot from engineers, contractors, service directors, and it should probably be done annually, not maybe once every. So I do heavily agree with that. How's it going on that project between Hummel and Smith?
As far as
maybe getting it done, obviously it's still down the way.
Between Hummel and Snow?
Snow, I'm sorry, Snow. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, we got mainline installation, completed through the contractor, his boring machine, which he was using to do the service laterals, is down for repair. He's got some parts on order. So we've put some pavement in some of the areas where we're not going to be needing to dig up to put those service laterals in. So once his machine's back up and running and we get those laterals in, we ought to be able to get that area cleaned up a little bit better here.
Okay, and they're staying on top of a couple of people from Smith tell me, but they're staying pretty much on top of them chuck holes, things like that when it breaks apart there.
We're staying on top of the contractor to keep those potholes.
I know you are. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman D'Amico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Ed, I would just want to say thank you. We had a number of residents on Smith Road. You handled some of the issues that they had up there during the time they've been going through the resurfacing and the actual maintenance of the sewers. We appreciate that, and I appreciate the expertise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Troyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to the engineer, Mr. Piatek. I got some information roundabout way about the Sylvia Leslie project, and my understanding is that it's going to go out for bid in the next 1 to 2 months.
I would expect to see it out on the street end of this month, early next.
Okay, so what's the time frame of them possibly starting that? It seems like, we started this last year. I mean, this was passed last year, and I know you did some of the work on it last year.
Right.
We can't speed that up. These people have been waiting for 4 years to get this done over there.
It'll be completed this construction season.
You will? Okay, well, that's good to know.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, and then it's been almost a year since we had the bad flooding. Is there anything new on that? Any fixes? Any thoughts? Anything found? Blockages? Anything?
Not that I was aware of. Not that was brought to my attention.
Thank you.
Councilman Bergio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again to Ed. I think you said the project is doing well. You're right on schedule. Are you still planning to be finished with it around August? Is that the date?
I believe the completion date is September 28th. I'd have to go back and check, but I believe it's in September, mid to late September, okay. And I would anticipate hitting that completion date. Yes.
Okay. And the asphalt that's going to be done all at one time?
Yes.
Okay.
What's out there, if I may, what's out there now at the intersection of Snow, we put some temporary asphalt down just to help with the intersection areas and some of the crossovers and some of the side streets, so we can open those back up. So when we're through, even through the Snow Road crossing through Smith, there's a temporary concrete cap that we put on so that we can maintain traffic. Once we're ready to pave the final asphalt surface, we'll pull that little concrete cap off and pave it basically from Hummel to Holland, that trench area.
Yeah, I did see that, the temporary asphalt there, and you guys did a good job in keeping Snow and Smith open too. That was done really quickly and really wasn't that much of a problem. As I would have expected it to be, so good job there. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilman Troyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One more. Through the chair to the engineer, Mr. Piatek. Concerning the cross connections and the sanitary sewer going up Smith Road, when that's done and the cross connections are all fixed, well, let's say once the cross connections are all fixed in the city, which we're planning on doing, will that sanitary sewer up Smith Road help at all with flooding, stormwater flooding?
Well, if we fix the cross connections, you shouldn't have stormwater in the sanitary sewer.
Okay.
But I don't foresee you're not going to eliminate stormwater from your sanitary system altogether. You'll never do it. You'll have to repipe the entire community.
Okay, then you're saying we still have some cross connections, so to speak.
We'll have cross connections, or you'll have inflow and infiltration, where you'll have leaky joints that, will require the stormwater, groundwater to come through into the sanitary.
But they'll be greatly diminished. So my question is, when we do fix all the cross connections, where's that stormwater going to go when we have the big storms?
In the storm sewer.
Okay, which fill the capacity.
That's where it belongs. It doesn't belong in the sanitary.
So there's still going to be an issue of where that extra stormwater goes.
what would go in the storm sewer or would stay on the surface.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to move the agenda. We'll go to our Service Director, Lou Catt. Lou?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last week we took delivery of the street sweeper. I had two of my employees trained on the machine that's been out. We started over in Ward 4. Everything east of the CSX tracks has been done. We're starting in other part of Ward 4 now, which is Lindmont, that area there, Michael Drive. And we'll be working our way all the way to the west end. Water breaks, we've been taking care of the water breaks. We had got a handle on those. I call the contact that I have the water company to get them out, because that one that was up by Speedway at 130th and Snow was just a disaster. And same with one on Smith Road by Richard. But my guy's been digging them out and capping them with concrete. We're getting ready to cap them with some asphalt here. Yard waste is going to start next week. And a lot of people have been calling down or stopping by and seeing what's going on. So next week we'll be starting with the yard waste. Up on 237, I was approached by the state. You know, they're going to do that big job up there this year from Eastland to Brook Park Road, the resurfacing project, and they asked that we go up and clean all the sewers and the laterals up there. And to my knowledge, this is the first time that this has been done by the city. But that's all done as of today. I got that to report also. That they've been up there marking 237 where they're going to be cutting out the joints that are bad. And while my guys were up there, two of my employees, John Bernath Jr. and Al Barbaric, were on coming off the ramp of 237 going north to Brook Park Road and witnessed a fella in a van hit a pole. Ripped over, opened his van, took the pole out. They blocked traffic, called EMS and the police. And John Bernath sat in the van with the fella trying to comfort him. I'm not sure what happened, if he had a heart attack or what, but he did die.
Was that today, Lou?
Yes, it was today. So I give John Bernath some recognition for that. It's probably a tough thing for him to do, sit there and watch a guy die. Other than that's all I have.
Thank you, Lou. Councilman Higgins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the director, yeah, I was glad to see the sweeper out this week, and because I'm familiar with a lot of your personnel at the garage, I was pretty happy to see the couple of people, both Miss O'Black and Mr. Apathy operating that. I think it was a good choice you made there, Mr. Catt. As far as Diane goes, Diane's good to see you. You asked what we can do about cleaning up the neighborhood. I think you're doing what needs to be done, leading by example. I know over where I live, you got that long brown fence by Settlement Acres. I don't know why people think that's a place to throw anything out their car windows as they drive by, but on a regular basis, I take a garbage bag and walk that strip and clean that up myself. And I think it's a mindset. I play ball around the country. I know when I go to Long Island, New York, and I go and walk on their baseball fields over there, you wouldn't even think about throwing a gum wrapper on the ground over there, because that's how that place is kept. So I think the idea is if you keep your community clean, people recognize that and keep it clean. And when there's garbage all over the place, people think it's acceptable to throw garbage all over the place. So I don't know what all the answers are. I do know there is a program out there, though. I don't know if Mr. Catt's got any applications for it. The county has a program where you can sign up and actually have some prisoners come through your community, and they'll walk some of your main drags. I know I used to do it here. They'll walk like Snow Road, Brook Park Road, Smith Road, and they'll take a van out with some prisoners and clean up some of your main drags. So maybe we could look into that application process. But thanks for coming tonight. It's good to see you.
Councilman Salvatore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Lou. Lou, I just want to comment as well on the sweeper. I'm glad to see that we have one back, and I've watched them work, and I think you made a good choice on the two individuals. I've seen them both. They're doing a great job, and that sweeper is a great piece of equipment because I've seen improvement already. I just want to comment. Thank you.
Councilman Bergio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to chime in on that too. I've seen the sweeper on my street on Sylvia Drive and a couple other places too. So it's good to see it in action already and getting rid of all the dirt. I'm sure it's going to help our sewers, keeping all that dirt from going down our sewers. But if I could just take this time too and address Diane back there too. I just wanted to invite you. We have a beautification pride committee, and there's several folks on that committee who feel just like you do. They want to make sure Brook Park, they want to encourage people to take care of their properties, and I just invite you to come to it. Our meeting is tomorrow. It's at the rec center at 7 o'clock. And your input would really be greatly appreciated. You'll meet some folks that feel it like you do. So just wanted to give you that invitation. Thank you.
Councilman Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I concur on that, Diane. We do need to get younger. It's a great group, and they're very, very proactive. But you know, we get some younger people in there. I think we could get a lot more done. Lou, ironically, I went to dinner with John Burnett last night. He told me what he'd be on, and I said, John, be careful on 237. I did not know till you said that. I do hear the sweeper too, and I also hear the Vector. A lot of people happy to see that Vector out. Are you going to try to, that and the tree lawns and the sidewalk machine, the repairs, are you going to try to stay on top of them things? And I mean, on that I mean sweeper, Vector, as much as the rubbish and the grass. I know that's going to be the big elephant, but the tree lawns I'm getting some calls on, and the sidewalk, we had discussed this yesterday at the shop. Are you going to try to stay on them?
Yeah, through the chair to Councilman Mancini, only if you come back to work.
Oh, no, I'll come back tonight if I could, absolutely. Throw that grass, yeah, no problem. You get my other hip done, but I appreciate that. And one more thing, Lou, the rules for the rubbish, because I know they changed a little bit. Mr. Moran changed a few things. Them will be coming out to the residents when? I know they were in print, maybe? Am I wrong? Or the new rules for rubbish.
Yeah, it's in print right now.
Okay, do you know about when they might get out?
I think the end of the week, possibly.
Okay, probably before that grass, maybe, hopefully.
Try.
Okay, we appreciate that. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilman Troyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm also happy to see the street sweeper out there, especially on my street where I mentioned a few weeks ago that it looked like a gravel bomb went off, and it did clean that up very well. As I think street sweepers last year and the years before did. Through the chair to the excuse me, Service Director, Mr. Cat, you've been out vectoring some of those sewers. Is that true? You know, cleaning them out. Have you found anything that would have caused that flooding from last year?
In which neighborhood?
Well, mine, Liberty Bell. I mean, they're in my neighborhood. We got a lot of flooding that hasn't just been seen in 10, 12 years. At least, and Liberty Bell too.
Is that from the May 12th storm?
Yes.
Yeah. That's the first time I ever got flooded in my home. So, when you get the freak storm like that, you know, it's a toss of the dice.
Okay. So you didn't find anything?
No, nothing out of the usual.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we'll move the agenda. We'll go to our Safety Director, David Burns.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Or good evening, a long day already. I have a couple of things to report. First, we have moved our animal shelter into the building that formerly housed our building department on Smith Road. That move is now fully effective, and the shelter has moved over, and it seems to be functioning fine. I do have a couple of things to report. We did have a rather large DARE graduation. Our new DARE officer is pretty aggressive this year. 350 of our children have graduated from DARE. In fact, the mayor was gone. When he was gone, I dropped off 350 certificates for him to sign, give him something to do when he was recovering. That was a pretty large class. The mayor did mention the STOP program. We do have an extra unit of policemen that are patrolling strictly in traffic enforcement, and that's been successful. I believe that tomorrow, when we have mayor's court, it'll be the biggest court day in quite a while. It'll be tomorrow morning. They've been successful. I do have some unfortunate news. I got a couple calls about this. I know there's been some questions about it. On March 27th, we had one of our young people was walking on the railroad tracks and was struck by a locomotive, and he lost his life. And this was on Friday night, about 5:45 in the evening. The police worked all weekend on the case. We had to deal with the family. The detectives worked all weekend on this. There was a long investigation. It was an unfortunate accident. And I can't answer any more questions than that, other than the report that it's a family's been devastated, a young person has lost his life, and our police department did yeoman work talking to the families, keeping things together, dealing with the medical examiner. It was a very stressful weekend for the people in the Detective Bureau. I wanted to publicly congratulate them and honor them because that's very hard to deal with that. They did a great job, and I would not like to see this repeated in Brook Park again. I wish people would be a little more careful on the tracks and avoid it. I drive to work in the morning and occasionally I see people down on Engle Road near the trains, and no longer do I go by and it doesn't really register with me. It registers with me every day now. So I would urge people, tell your children, these things are dangerous and please be aware. Mr. Chairman, that completes my report.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, we'll go to Councilman Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that program that the police are doing, a lot of that, is that residential or is that Freeway 237? What do we have on that? Where they, you said we're going to have the traffic court pretty full. Well, where are they going to be coming from? Out of the residential area or 71, most of them tickets?
A lot of them are near the airport area. There are some residential areas, but most of them are the airport area, 71, in that vicinity.
Well, good to hear they're spread out. I mean,
yes.
And it's good to hear that they're out and enforcing that law, because one of the things I get a lot of calls on is speeding. The other thing that I get a lot of calls on is, and Mr. Salvatore kind of touched on it, and I thought he did it very good when we met with the representative from CSX, is the train horn noise. You know, Sunday morning, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. But you got the other end, what you just discussed. So it's kind of like a two-way street there, you know, and I try to tell people that because some get very upset, you know, Jimmy, I'm tired of hearing it in the morning, there's, you know, 6 trains and they're ringing that thing 7, 8 times, and then we have a situation which happened unfortunately and very sadly this past weekend. On that you're right, that was a very sad situation. I know in my ward over between Michael and Middlebrook, behind, I think is D. Michelle's Auto Repair, they're right off Sheldon. They have kids after school. You know, at CSX, when I call, well, we'll go out there. And I know it's hard for you guys because you have your plate full too. But are we doing anything when we do see these kids on the tracks, or we do see somebody walking on the tracks? Are we doing anything? Is there anything on the table on that?
If anybody would, Mr. Chair, if anybody would call the police department, we would send somebody out and urge them obviously get off the tracks. Especially now, there's a lot of sensitivity to it. But if anybody would see anything like that, we'd call the police. We respond to every single call we have. We don't decide that it's not important enough to send somebody. Our problem is, as a city, we don't have enough police personnel like we have in the past. We're really stretched. And we've changed their work schedule to get more policemen on the road, but we still have more calls that it takes time. But absolutely, if somebody sees something and they call, our police officers will go and they will urge the people to get off the tracks, and it has happened.
And Dave, just, you know, that's what I do recommend. Call right away, and I wholeheartedly agree. You guys are definitely stretched. I talked with them guys, I talked with 2 yesterday. You are definitely stretched. But I do recommend people call right away, and that's just with any situation. But that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilman Troyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Safety Director. Mr. Burns, I was just wondering, can you help Mr. Jarrett out maybe in the meantime before we get that sign out there? Maybe increase the patrols over there, maybe catch a few of these people that are speeding on the street?
I can certainly mention the police department, to the police chief, to ask them to pay special attention to the area. I can't put the machine out until the weather is warmer and drier, as I pointed out. I certainly can make special attention for the Hocking Road where Mr. Jack lives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to the Safety Director, to expand on Mr. Troyer's request, I get a lot of calls from all of those streets that cross Smith where people are speeding because they're getting around the construction area, and they say that it isn't just the private automobiles that are speeding, but it's also the construction trucks that are speeding on their side streets. if you could have more patrols over there. Thank you.
Can I answer?
Yes, go ahead.
One thing I would urge, Councilwoman, if someone calls you with that, they really should call the police dispatcher and let them know that it's going on. Because all I can do is tomorrow mention it to the chief and have someone pay attention. But if someone would call in right away, they could address it right away. And I've said this before, the best way to get attention to your problem if you live in Brook Park is to call the police department, let the dispatcher know so they can act on it right away. I'll certainly mention it to the chief tomorrow, and thank you for bringing it to my attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. We will move the agenda. We'll go to our Law Director, Neil Jameson. Neil?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. First address the question about emergency clause. I think that's a good question because that's something that's really misunderstood as it relates to when we pass an ordinance or resolution. The law in Ohio, our charter provides that if there is no emergency clause, and typically it's the last section in every ordinance. So for the one tonight about, for a lot of the ordinances tonight, it's the last section. What the emergency clause does is that if it's not in there, the law under state law and the charter says that it takes effect 30 days after the mayor signs the legislation. By doing the emergency clause, what you do is you take away that requirement of the 30-day waiting requirement, and that ordinance or resolution would go into effect immediately after the signing by the mayor. So all it's doing is that it's accelerating the effective date of that legislation. It doesn't change anything, it doesn't mitigate anyone's rights or anything like that. What it basically allows is for that ordinance to go into effect immediately. So that's the purpose of the emergency clause in every ordinance. And in my experience, we're not unusual. Most cities have that kind of clause in their ordinance or resolution that gets adopted by council at every meeting. The second question the lady had was about the lawsuit in terms of could anything have been done prior to the vote being taken in February. And that was something that I addressed a couple weeks ago, or it seems last month. But it is a good question again, to the extent that that was something that was asked by this council last August. When this first issue was first raised last August, when the petitions were presented, at that time, the question was raised, can we determine the validity of the ordinance in question, or the proposed ordinance? And the answer to that, as I gave last August, was no. The law doesn't provide for that. The law provides that, as that ordinance was presented, that this council had the right to either adopt it, amend it, or reject it. And just to go through this once again, this council, through a lot of work, a majority decided to amend it, because in their mind, they felt that that would be the way for it to be effective. Again, reiterating what I've said consistently since this was first adopted last August, in my opinion, the ordinance as presented, and that was first in August and later to the voters in February, would never have any legal effect. So what this council attempted to do by amending it last August was to try and make it have some meaning, to try and honor the intention of the people who signed that petition. So that essentially the law doesn't allow this council, me, or anybody to prejudge the validity of a proposed ordinance before it goes to the people. And that's basically because we're not judges. You know, that's something a court of law has to determine in order to make that judgment. And a court of law isn't going to do that because, for lack of a better term, it wasn't ripe for being resolved to determine its validity. The law basically provides that it has to go to the voters, and if it is adopted or passed, at that time, you can then challenge or question its validity. So it's a good question. We did not have the ability, legally or administratively, to make that determination before it went to the voters. That being said, like I said a couple of minutes ago, from the beginning I have consistently stated that there was an issue with the effectiveness or the ability of that proposed ordinance to be a valid ordinance or a law. And as I've said consistently, it usurps the ability of the executive branch, in this case the mayor's office, to run the day-to-day affairs of a certain division or department. And that's the problem with this ordinance. It doesn't get to saying that that vote was not legitimate. It wasn't that we're questioning how it was filed with the Board of Elections. This lawsuit is not about that. We're not saying that anything was done improperly in gathering the petitions or anything like that. What we're saying is that this ordinance, as it's proposed, and as people want it to be enforced, there's a real question as to whether it should be enforced, because it carries a lot of precedent for how cities run their day-to-day affairs. And so, obviously, there's a difference of opinion between what I feel and others and the committee that brought this forward. That committee feels strongly that that ordinance should stand. I feel strongly the other way. That's why you have a court of law to resolve those differences. I did not bring this lawsuit randomly against certain individuals in the city. Those 3 people that were named were the people who represented that they were the committee. On the petitions that were circulated to the public and that were presented to the Board of Elections, the 3 people named as defendants in the lawsuit represented that they were the committee. And the law clearly provides, and there is a lot of case law, where people in committees collectively and individually have been named as defendants in these kind of lawsuits. This is not the first time this has happened. So this is not new law in that sense. That this is something that goes on all the time where there's legitimate questions as to the validity of what was passed. So that's the real purpose of what we're doing here. And I heard the statement before that someone's going to lose their home. We're not suing people for monetary damages. We're suing for the court to determine whether we have to follow that proposed ordinance or not. That's really what the lawsuit's about. And so that this hysteria about that I'm picking on people, or that the law department is picking on people, is wrong. And the last thing is, Mr. Cosmerl stated that he had sent me 2 letters in the last couple of weeks. And initially I wasn't going to respond to them because essentially they were personal attacks. Personal attacks on me. Essentially personal attacks on my faith as a Roman Catholic. He questioned that I was acting like Judas for the love of money. He questioned that I was not a devout Catholic, which I have been for all 55 years of my life. He has questioned that my soul is in peril in 2 letters that he sent to me. And I would sit here and say that that is none of his business. That the way I practice my faith is between me and my God. And for him to judge me is not appropriate in this forum whatsoever. And I would say to you, Mr. Cosmerl, because I did look it up, from Matthew, judge not that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Neil.
May I respond to that?
No, you cannot, Frank. We're out of audience participation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I thought I'd just respond to it.
Councilman Bergio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've been talking about trains a lot this evening, and Dennis touched on it when he talked about Rick's meeting with the CSX, which I'm really glad you're doing, Rick. And Dennis and I get some of the same emails. We got 7 emails from residents within the last 24 hours about idling trains. Right now, the police cannot enforce that if the train is more than 100 feet away. Would it be to our benefit to increase that? Can we? Do you think that it would help if we could increase that? Would it be enforceable, say 200 or 300 feet?
You're talking about the ordinance that we amended last year. Mm-hmm. Here's the problem with that ordinance. It seems like I'm always questioning ordinances here. We've had meetings with both railroads. You were, I think, at one of them. And we just had one like a month ago. My assistant law director met with the other railroad. The railroads have asserted under federal law that they are exempt from local regulation because of specifically things in the U.S. Constitution that provides that we can't interfere with interstate commerce. Recently, last year, there was a lawsuit up in federal court in Toledo that addressed that issue, and in that case, the court found for the railroad. So the threat that we've always, us, and we're not the only ones, I know Olmsted Falls is going through the same thing as we speak, and we're not the only community having this issue. The thing that's going on is the railroads at that point will push back and say, well, if you're going to try and make things more stringent or increase the fines, that we're going to push back. We have been citing them. We've got a number that are pending over in Berea Municipal Court. The police have been diligent and have been doing what they're supposed to. The problem arises is that, as you know from that meeting, that there's a myriad of reasons why they're doing it. One is because their business is picked up. I don't know if that's an indication that at least their business is doing better, but I know is the explanation they gave to us was that they just don't have enough personnel to handle the locomotives to get them moved in appropriate fashion. And I think that's when we talked like 3 or 4 months ago about they're actually looking to hire people and they're having a hard time filling positions because nobody, I guess, wants to do that kind of work. On top of that, the other issue becomes where it's located. And what we can do again is try and sit down with them. I know when we had that initial meeting, they were going to try and be more responsive, particularly about the idling trains, because that clearly could be disconcerting, you know, particularly late at night. So that's something that we'll address. The ongoing problem with the signal blowing, and it gets to the issue that Dave Burns related with the young person losing their life. The conductor, if he feels that if he sees somebody or if there's an animal on the tracks or he sees something, they're trained to blow the whistle because from their perspective, if they don't and they cause an accident, then they could be sued because they're not employing the methods or protocol that they're trained to do. So as far as blowing the signals, again, we can try and do what we can, but the idling, I know has been a constant problem in the last year and a half. And I'll follow up with the safety director and see what we can do.
Hopefully we can negotiate something with them that maybe they can have them parked where it's far enough away from the residents, because it was idling like 7.5 hours as our email told us.
And you know that's the discussion we had with them, and they were going to attempt to do that, but whether they
What
followed through.
What about the fact that if they're idling, there's nobody occupying them? Isn't that a safety problem? Couldn't we discuss that with them?
The problem is was explained to me, is that I think there's a 12-hour limit that they can operate a locomotive. And by federal law and regulation, once they get to that time frame, they have to get off the train, that they're not allowed, quote-unquote, work overtime. So the problem becomes then they have to shut down, get a new crew out there, and then you just don't start a train. It takes a while for the momentum, you know, to get it moving again. So that's the dilemma, and that's where it really gets down to, that they need more crews so that, you know, that these trains aren't idling. So the big problem is that various federal regulations, safety regulations, sort of, you know, control that kind of activity.
Well, I'm looking forward to that meeting, Rick, and maybe we can discuss it with them and Dennis, and maybe there'll be a positive outcome, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move the agenda. We'll go to our recreational director, Mary Ann Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to give a shout out and a special thank you to Timmy Chornak and the Boosters for purchasing 3 flat screen televisions for our weight room areas. They're beautiful. Our members truly love them. The Boosters are also donating food tomorrow. The kids are out of school for spring break, and we started a new mentoring program, and we're going to be doing different activities with the kids from 2 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And a lot of the kids don't have food and they're hungry throughout the day. So the Boosters are paying for a pasta dinner with a roll and a water or something like that for the kids to get something to eat throughout the course of the day. And then I also wanted to thank everybody who donated and came out and participated in our Easter egg hunt. We had over 300 participants.
Thanks, Mary Ann. Go to Councilman Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mary Ann, I could concur with that on the Boosters. I seen the TVs, they're tremendous, and They actually do a lot, and they don't really ask too much back, and what they did is tremendous, and I concur wholeheartedly with you on that. So, but that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilman Schreier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maria, I'd like to thank, if you pass this on, thank the children, the young adults, I should say, that helped us set up the Luncheon for Beautification and Pride Committee. Helped us set it up, helped us take it down. I know you're instrumental in that with a little pizza, but I want to thank them for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. We'll move the agenda. We'll go to the Finance Director, Greg Sinkel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Monthly reports for March were issued today. If anybody has any questions, as always, feel free to give me a call. And we'll also get those reports made available on the city's website here in the next day or so. That concludes my report tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Greg. Anybody have any questions to the Finance Director?
Chairman.
Councilman Salvatore.
Through the chair to Greg. Hey, Greg, have you had a chance to put a pencil to it on the savings by moving the animal shelter into the city building?
I have not as of yet.
Okay, will you get that for me when you get a chance?
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councilman. We'll move the agenda. Item K, we have one resolution tonight. We have a resolution honoring the Brea Mid-Park Titans boys basketball team for their winning the back-to-back Southwest Conference Championship and District runner-up, and declaring an emergency introduced by Councilman Bergios to be placed in the Recreation Committee. We have one item under verbal approval. We have approval to construct a new 100-foot wireless communication tower at 1901 Aerospace Parkway, located in the U6 zone.
Motion approved.
Support. There's a motion to approve, properly supported, under discussion. Michelle, please call a roll on the motion.
Higgins?
Yes.
D'Amico?
Yes.
Troyer?
I support.
Okay, I'll start over. Higgins?
Yes.
Troyer?
Yes.
D'Amico?
Yes.
Salvatore?
Yes.
Mancini?
Yes.
Bergio?
Yes.
Powers? Yes.
Okay, that approved by verbal approval. We'll have no items on L. We move to item M, introduction of resolutions and ordinances on our first reading. We have two. Resolution number 7-2015.
Introduced by Councilman Salvatore and Councilmembers Troyer, Mancini, Powers, Higgins, Bergio, D'Amico, Council President Patton, and Mayor Coyne, honoring the Brea Mid-Park Academic Challenge Team and declaring an emergency.
Resolution number 7-2015 has had its first reading. But item number 2, resolution number 8-2015. Michelle.
Sorry about that. Introduced by Councilman Bergio, Council Members Troyer, Mancini, Powers, Higgins, D'Amico, Salvatore, Council President Patton, and Mayor Coyne, in support of House Bill 60, Dick Goddard's Act, and declaring an emergency.
Resolution number 8-2015 has had its first reading. Go to item N, introduction of resolutions and ordinances under second reading. Item number 1, ordinance number 9961-2015. Michelle.
Amending section 1313.04 of the Brook Park Codified Ordinances entitled General Residential Building Permit Fees and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilman Mancini.
Motion to suspend.
Support.
Motion to suspend, properly supported. Under discussion.
Yes.
Under discussion, Councilwoman Powers.
I think that we are supposedly encouraging people to keep up their property, maintain their property, and yet we are, in a sense, penalizing them by making these permits higher fees. So I think that we should not raise the permit fees at all. Just leave them as they are, because money is short enough with most people in this community as it is. So if you raise the fee, then the contractor is going to be raising his fee to cover that. And so it's just a double penalty for the person that's trying to maintain their home.
Okay, thanks, Councilwoman. Michelle, please call a roll.
Salvatore?
Yes.
D'Amico?
Yes.
Troyer?
No.
Mancini?
Yes.
Bergio?
Yes.
Powers?
No.
Higgins?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance number 9961-2015 has had its second reading. Item number 2, ordinance number 9962-2015. Michelle.
Introduced by Mayor Coyne, authorizing the mayor to enter in a contract between Brewery Garrett Company and the city of Brook Park and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance number 9962-2015 has had its second reading. Got item number 3, ordinance number 9963-2015.
Introduced by Council President Patton, approving the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances as parts of the various component codes of the codified ordinances, providing for the adoption of new matter in the updated and revised codified ordinances, publishing the enactment of such new matter, repealing ordinances and resolutions in conflict therewith, and declaring an emergency.
Motion suspend?
Support.
There's a motion to suspend, properly supported, under discussion.
Yes.
Councilwoman.
I would like to have a better explanation of this because I know you can say it's housekeeping or whatever, but who decides what's in, this tells me basically nothing because it doesn't tell me what ordinances are being changed.
This is our codified ordinances. This is the laws of the city of Brook Park that have been passed that are enforced. And this goes through the book and makes all the necessary changes that have been made the previous year and places them back in the book so as people are doing their jobs, they know what they're supposed to be enforcing. This is housekeeping in every single community there is. The law director want to make a comment on that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would relate that the clerk of council always has me review what is sent over by the service that does this for us. And, I approved everything that's going in. It's consistent with what we adopted in 2014. There are some instances where the Ohio Revised Code has been updated in certain instances. So our local code is updated to coincide with the state code as it relates to traffic and criminal offenses. Just that, as an example, like a definition might get changed. So those are things that are done. So every year I'm asked to do that, and I did that this year. And I didn't see any problem with what they had done. They incorporated the things that we had passed in 2014. And on top of that, they updated certain parts of our local code that had been modified at the state level. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Salvatore.
This is to comment on the quote-unquote house cleaning terminology. If there was such an ordinance, it would fall under house cleaning. This would be at the top of the list. This is truly house cleaning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Shall call the roll on the motion.
Salvatore?
Yes.
Bergio?
Yes.
Mancini?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Higgins?
Yes.
D'Amico?
Yes.
Troyer?
Yes. Move to adopt.
Support.
There's a motion to adopt, properly supported, under discussion. Shall please call the roll on adoption.
Troyer?
Yes.
Salvatore?
Yes.
D'Amico?
Yes.
Mancini?
Yes.
Bergio?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Higgins?
Yes.
Ordinance number 9963-2015 is passed under suspension of the rules. Go to item O, we have one under third reading. Ordinance number 9959-2015.
Authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with Cuyahoga County for the resurfacing of West 130th Street and declaring an emergency, introduced by Mayor Coyne.
Move to adopt.
Support.
There's a motion to adopt, properly supported, under discussion. Shall call the roll on adoption.
D'Amico?
Yes.
Troyer?
Yes.
Salvatore?
Yes.
Mancini?
Yes.
Bergio?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Higgins?
Yes.
Ordinance number 9959 has been adopted. That concludes all council business. We go to Councilwoman Jan Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say a few things about the things that were brought up tonight by our constituents, and also last week we had the presentation, or 2 weeks ago we had the presentation about the thing to put on your refrigerator that was going to cost about $60,000. Well, they have something called a vial of life, which gives you the same information, and it's free. You just download it from the internet, and you put it on your refrigerator. They send you a little packet, and you put it on your refrigerator, and they give you another little notice to put on your door, so that when the emergency squad comes to your house, they know when they see the door that you have something there for information for them. The problem with that, as Mrs. Barber said, is it works if you have a problem in your home, but not if you are out in the community. And I talked to some other people about this. I have a friend that has a medallion type necklace that he wears that has all his information on it. And if he were to collapse down the park where nobody knows him, then he would, they would have this medallion, they would call the 800 number, and it has his complete, everything, all his information on it. And I use Fairview Park Hospital, and our Fairview Park has something called My Chart, and I carry a little card in my wallet right beside my driver's license, and if I were to have a problem where no one knew me out, the emergency squad would have access to this card, and they could call any Cleveland Clinic facility, and they would have my chart. Every doctor I see, everything I've ever, every time I've ever gone to the doctor, every medication I take. So there are things out there that are free or very nominal cost that is available to people. And as far as Mr. Reba, I don't think he's here anymore. But anyway, I wanted to say to him that if he would drive down Elm Street, which is over in the Fairlawn neighborhood, or drive down West 140th Street, he would see that a couple of years ago, we resurfaced those streets and we built in the kerplunks. The kerplunks, the kerplunks, the kerplunks, they're there. So, and I agree with everyone who spoke about this lawsuit. We don't have the money for it. We shouldn't have the stomach for it. And you can bring your religion into it if you want to, but my God says you are accountable for everything you do, and just because some law book says you are technically allowed to do this, doesn't mean it is right in the eyes of God, and or man, for that matter. And many people have come in here and said, this is frivolous, it is a waste, so I don't know why we can't just drop it. I don't care what the explanation is. We do not need to be pursuing this. And our roads kind of speak for themselves, but I would like for everyone who is here tonight to know that a budget was passed that had no money in it for roads. $0 for roads. And we laid off about 17 people last year, so we had that savings, and that money just got absorbed somewhere, but it didn't go for roads. And we passed budget, even with those 17 layoffs and all the money that saved, we still passed basically the same budget we had last year, which to me it shouldn't have been, and I didn't vote for it. And as far as the animal shelter changing, yes, it's wonderful that we got rid of that $1,850 rental fee, and surely the utilities will be less in this new building, but there are no laundry facilities for the animals, bedding and so forth, in that facility. There's no stationary tubs that are big enough to handle cleaning food and water bowls. So there are some problems there that need to be addressed, and it will cost us some money. But it will cost us a lot less money than paying that $1,850 a month for rent. And can't read my own notes. Having a problem with my own notes. So I guess that pretty much covers the animal shelter. Oh, one other thing. I couldn't read my note because I didn't put it here. The fire station, Greg. How much does it cost for that fire station out there on Rupel Road? Because we laid off, how many firemen did we lay off? 5 or 6? That saves us some money there. We're employing fewer firemen. And so just what does it cost? The fire station is already there. What does it cost?
Through the chair to Councilwoman Powers, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the cost of to operate the fire station, are you referring to utilities, or are you talking about personnel as well, or what?
I'm referring to utilities because that's what it costs to keep the station open.
Okay, plus the personnel. That's okay. I'll perform an analysis and I'll get it back to you in the next week or so. Okay, because there's personnel. There are 2 guys in there at all times now, and in utilities. I think roughly with utilities and the repair and maintenance on it. Back a year or so ago when I looked at it, I think it was roughly around $12,000. Just on that, just the utilities and the repair and maintenance and some of the ancillary expenses, not including the personnel. Okay, but let me look into it and I'll get back to you.
Thank you. And the other question is, how many firemen did we have at Holland Road when Rupel was closed? So are we hiring more firemen to go over there, or are we just splitting the ones that were at Holland to put them back over there?
To the safety director.
When Rupel Road was closed, all the personnel was assigned to Holland Road. Once we opened Rupel Road, we transferred people from Holland over to Rupel Road. There was no additional hiring of personnel, and no one got laid off when Rupel was closed. So all we did was transfer those firefighters over to Holland Road.
So are you telling me that we were paying the same number of firemen when they were all at Holland Road that we are paying now that we have some at Holland and some at Rupel?
Chairman, Councilwoman, we have the same number of personnel. We transferred the 2 firefighters from Rupel Road daily, which were a total of 6 for the entire week, over to Holland Road. I'm sorry, no, that's correct. And then when we reopened Rupel Road, we transferred those 2 firefighters per day back to Rupel Road, leaving only 5 firefighters, or 4, at Holland Road. Instead of having 6 people minimum on duty at Holland Road, we now have 7 on duty, and 2 of them are stationed at Rupel Road. We don't have the same number of people at Holland Road.
All right. Thank you.
Councilman DeMico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair, Mrs. Powers. Jan, I'd like you to go ahead and call the fire station and talk to them about that vial of life. And the reason it isn't being used because it's a not approved program, and it's not something that worked over at the fire station. And also, the reason this thing that we're talking about, the USB port, is a good idea, and you're talking about not protecting people in the metro parks. You know, Carl Burgio, Councilman, brought forward the Burgio Bob, as I think we all nicknamed it, and it was for the expedite. They call to the house when they came down the street to see it. They didn't take it with them when they went walking in the park either. But it's to protect the people in the city in their homes. That's what I'm trying to do here, and some other city council members that may be supporting this. If I could come up with a better way to track them while they're going around town or somewhere outside of their home to protect them, I'd be the first one to ask everybody on council to do so. But at this point in time, this is the best resource I can come up with, and some other members of council, to protect them in their home and expedite the response time. You talked about response times before, different things with the fire station being closed, the ambulances being too far. And the thing is with this, it really helps expedites the rescue process. You can talk to the firemen over there, and you can talk to them about slapping those on a laptop while you have a spouse or someone that's loved in the household having a heart attack or something that they can't respond to because the other person that's related to them is hysterical in the household. As far as that goes, I think it's a good program. I appreciate the comments, but I think you should do some more studying before you remark on it. Thank you.
Councilman Higgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to, I think our finance director, this would go. I think what Ms. Powers Councilwoman Powers was asking is the cost of opening that station. Some of the line of her questions here to the safety director tells me once again that I don't think she quite understands what happens when that station gets opened. And what happens when that station gets opened is contract language, which kicks in minimum manning language, which says there must be 7 people on duty. So when the minimum manning language kicks in because a second station is open, and that was the purpose of that ballot language, if maybe you don't understand what that was all about, what the law director is referring to, there is an overtime associated cost with it. It's just not the number of people, but the overtime it costs. So if you take a look at the expenditures of overtime last year for the fire department and the anticipated expenditures of overtime in this year's budget, you're going to find it's hundreds of thousands of dollars difference. So, Mr. Single, when you prepare that, please include the anticipated expenditures of overtime because of the opening of that station in that figure.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
to
go ahead.
the chair to Councilman Higgins, my analysis will include the increase in overtime as well.
Thanks, Councilman. We'll go to Councilman Bergio.
Thank you, Mrs. Chairman. I was going to reiterate what Councilman Attorney D'Amico said before. I think the process that we have here is you bring something forward, you try to get the information, and I think I commend him for bringing it forward so we can at least study it. And that's where we are with it right now, with the rescue program. Not sure if it's going to fit for Brook Park or not, but I do like the fact that we can help our residents in some way, and it may not be that way, I don't know. The Vial of Life, I talked to the fire chief yesterday about that also, and so I'm trying to get more input on it, but I think that we can at least tell people to be prepared for emergencies by having the medications written down so they can have it just so that the firefighters can come in and see what they have, and it could eliminate some time in asking questions if they have some things there. So anyway, we can prepare our residents to take better care of themselves. I'm all for it. So I'm just thankful that we have the process and we looked at it. We had the presentation the other day too. So, but I think the process is working, that we are examining it, and it may turn out not to be that. But anyway, we can help our residents. I'm for, and I'm even thinking maybe the Vial of Life is still something that has some merit to it, but I want to talk to the fire personnel more about that too. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Councilman. Councilman Troyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to the finance director, Mr. Single, did we or did we not lay off 5 firefighters at the beginning of the year?
There were, I believe there were 5 firefighters that were laid off as of December 31st.
Okay. And then when the station reopened, we hired back 2. Was that correct? Okay.
Go ahead, Dave. We recalled 2 firefighters, actually we recalled 3 of the 5 that were laid off were recalled within 60 days. So, and the other ones are not coming back. So we did recall 3 of the 5 within 60 days.
Okay, so I guess my point is that when we opened that station, we did not have the same amount of firefighters available to move out there. And we brought 3 back, so we're still short 2. So that will create overtime, because we don't have the same amount of firefighters in the department as we did when we were running last year both stations and had the 7-man minimum.
Councilman, the 7-person minimum in past years had created an enormous amount of overtime. Last year we cut the overtime to under $75,000. because by closing the station, we reduced the 7-man minimum to a 6-man minimum. And it was fine, it reduced response time. Opening that station, what we did was we took existing firefighters and the equipment and moved it back to Rupel Road. We didn't add any numbers, we just merely stationed them in a different building. But the one thing we did do is increase our manning level back to 7, which is going to increase, which is why you increased the overtime budget last week in that budget by your vote. So all we did was move the equipment back. We didn't do anything else.
Excuse me. You, one moment here. What we did was, when we had a 7-man minimum with that fire station open. We closed that fire station, and you moved everybody, originally you moved everybody back to station, the main fire station. And my understanding is at times, and there was as low as 6, as low as 5 on duty at the main fire station. Now you can tell me anything because this is what I've been told, so that is what it is. But it's just, you didn't, when you laid off the firefighters and you try to go back to 7 men, 2 fire stations open, and you're short 2 firemen, that creates the overtime. If we wouldn't have laid off the firemen, you wouldn't have the problem with the overtime. And last year, it wasn't the fact that you closed a fire station so much that it cut the overtime, it's that there was an agreement in the contract to limit the overtime to a certain amount of money.
No, Councilman, there is no agreement in the contract whatsoever on the overtime figure. That's a councilmanic function. We didn't negotiate an agreed figure with the fire department. We informed them that we would try to limit it to $75,000. That's the figure the council passed. The administration tried to work within that figure, and I think, Greg, correct me, I think we're just under that, I believe, for the year. But that's not a contractual item. The union can't negotiate their overtime budget. That's a function that you guys do.
Well, it was in the contract.
It was not in the contract. It was not in the contract, Councilman. That's not correct. I'll give you the contract, and you find it, I'll buy you dinner.
You're talking about last year.
I'm talking about last year. I've only been here a year and a half, so
okay.
a year. But I'll buy you dinner if you find it.
So the fact of the matter is, all right, if that's even true, and
I wouldn't misstate a fact to you, Councilman. I don't lie.
So if the overtime was cut last year, it was because you cut the amount of firemen on duty, or necessary to be on duty.
Dave, you want to answer that? The overtime was reduced last year. The primary reason it was reduced is we eliminated the minimum manning standard. Okay, I prepared a document for the mayor and council where I estimated how many man hours it would take to man both fire stations, and given our manning level, we were going to be short. All the sick leave is covered by overtime, etc. When we combined the stations, we saved some overtime because we didn't have the 7-person manning. We still had the same equipment. We still responded from the same building. And the rationale for closing the station was, frankly, essentially 60% of our runs happened on the eastern side of Brook Park. When we moved those 2 firefighters back to Rupel Road, we lengthened the response time back to the eastern half of Brook Park. But the overtime was cut because we eliminated the 7-person manning. The $75,000 is not in the contract. That was an administrative decision. And it's not in the contract now, and it wasn't in the contract last year. But the savings was because we reduced the number of people on duty. We didn't have the 7-person manning. We didn't lay anybody off until the end of the year.
I don't have the year wrong, right?
You don't have the year. There is no, well, let me answer it this way, Councilman. There is no contract, in my knowledge, that exists in the city of Brook Park's history where the budget was in, the overtime figure was in the contract for the firefighters, either during my tenure or the 2 or 3 contracts before. I've never seen anything like that. And nor was it negotiated since I've been safety director.
But there was a $75,000 limit
That was a councilmatic function in the budget, yes. I think you initially passed 125,000. And we had administratively tried to stick to $75,000. And yes, we discussed that with the union, that our intention was to cut the overtime. And we did cut the overtime.
Okay.
To a little under 75,000.
By closing the station, eliminating the 7-man minimum, correct?
Eliminating the 7-man minimum.
Which allowed you to not, when somebody called in sick or too many people called in sick or called off, you didn't have to call anybody in. So the way you eliminated that overtime was to run at a 6-man or a 5-man at times. That's how the overtime was eliminated. You didn't have to call anybody in, correct?
7-man minimum was eliminated, and that saved some overtime, absolutely.
Okay, so we didn't have the same amount of people at the main fire station as we had when we had both fire stations open and a 7-man minimum. All
Actually,
the time.
we have both stations open now, and that ordinance requires 5 people a day. We never went below 5 people on Holland Road, ever, even when we had Rupert Road closed. Mostly we had 6 or 7, sometimes even 8, but we had everybody at one station. But it is true, without the 7-man minimum, we could run short if the chief decided to do that, if he can run with 6 and not replace somebody who called in sick. And that's a decision that the administration made.
And that's where the savings came in.
That's where a lot of the savings came in.
Thank you.
No problem.
Councilman Higgins. Mr. Chairman, if my memory serves me correct, maybe Councilman Troyer is getting a little confused with, I think the union did offer the city during the contract negotiations, Mr. Burns, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't they try to offer the city some type of agreement where they would cap their overtime at a certain dollar amount if in fact the mayor left the Rupert Road station open?
Councilman Higgins, that is correct. That's absolutely correct.
Okay, but it was never contract language.
But it's not in language, and it was a discussion that we had with the union, but it's not part of the collective bargaining agreement, and nor was it enacted by council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Greg. Greg, are you working on the capital side of the budget?
Through the chair to Councilman Salter, yes, the mayor has the figure as far as how much can be spent this year on capital improvements. That's why the budget didn't reflect any amounts for roads. But as engineer stated earlier today, the Leslie Drive project is ongoing. It will happen and be funded this year, and it is part of the mayor's capital improvement budget for 2015.
How soon will that be ready?
You'd have to ask the mayor, Mr. Salvatore. I know he's working on it, so I would imagine here within a month or so.
And at that time, we can discuss the roads program in there. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, being no further business, the meeting's adjourned.